Part 1. We are the ones who watch. We are alone and we are bored, so we will document our life for you to enjoy. We are the ones who watch, a wordy name, but our true tongue does not translate to your alphabet. We are what you would call a monster or maybe a creature. Regardless, we are not like you. We have taken many forms, but no matter the form, we watch, we observe, we feed. In our natural state we are nothing. Just a featureless shell, just humanoid enough that at a passing glance you'd not think twice. Our mass is fluid, unlike your stiff fleshy muscles and brittle bones. We could be completely human in appearance, blend in with your society, but that doesn't scare you. We need that emotion to find our prey. Let us explain why we must do these things and feed upon those who feel. The Mother, our Creator, gave us a simple task, which is to feast until we are full. She likes to call this the Great Hunt. Our meals keep us alive, yet they are not completely to sustain us. All of us must pay tribute to the Mother. We hunger for something that your language lacks the word for, but considering your belief, spirit or soul may be a good substitute. She always says to watch with our spirit and not our eyes. A human spirit gives away more than the exterior of your fleshy vessels. However, we do watch with our eyes, but not in search of our next meal. No, we watch out of fascination of your odd behaviors. We do reach out with our mind, with our spirit, to feel all the emotions of our potential prey. Sadness, pain, anger, fear, even annoyance can soothe our ever-growing hunger. But the Great Hunt leads to boredom, which brings us all the way back around to why we are writing this. We are bored. We are lonely. You have emotions. We shall elaborate on the Great Hunt by showing you the hunt that we had today. The hunting grounds are ever-changing, but today we had decided a small neighborhood would be a great place to start. It was a small remote area with only a handful of houses. Each had a spacious yard that went about all the way to a large grove of trees. We sat at the edge of these woods, quiet and watching. Our eyes watched over these houses, made of dark oak. One had a small fenced-in area, another had a large garden full of ripening vegetables, the last on our side of the woods had an old car covered in rust. Our spirit found things that were more enticing than the old car or vegetables. Opening our mind, we could see what resided in these houses, see their spirit. A man with joy watched a peculiar sport on TV, an elderly man content with watching an elderly woman beside him knit, and many more. But the one we could taste in our mind was her, a woman so terribly sad. We listened as her soul cried out in agony. Her old dog had finally passed on due to his age. She felt so strongly of this dog we could even see it, a large dog she had raised since it was a pup. He had long black fur that draped from his body almost to touch ground. He was beautiful, we must admit, an example to define the German Shepherds as a whole. While we understand that these creatures mean the world to you humans, yet we just can't seem to understand why. This lack of understanding is not important though. We just knew that this pain was going to taste good. Maybe even better if we could draw out more. The food was ripe. From where we stood, her window appeared 7 to 8 feet off the ground. Which meant our current form was not suitable to our newfound task. We needed one to inspire fear that would add extra spice to our already delightfully intoxicating meal. We take many forms of flesh, whatever gets us through the hunt. We know many things about you humans. We have learned about your fears, whether it be of your natural wildlife or of the unnatural nightmares that haunt your sleep. This day we chose the form of the beast you so bluntly called skinwalker. An odd beast dreamt of by the old generations of people, which were hunted by the old ones who watched. As our form shifted, our height quickly began to grow until it had reached somewhere between 8 and 9 feet tall. Our vaguely human-shaped appendages began to take on more animalistic appearances. Both feet shifting into hooves and the legs followed by becoming covered in coarse hair like that of a deer. Our torso remained man-like, becoming more defined with muscle. Our arms were also partially human, but our forearms morphed into fur-covered claws. While the clawed hands didn't take a specific animal's shape, they were somewhat similar to bears. Our head was where the fear would come from. It was startling to us the first time we learned of this monstrosity. Our neck rose to meet a skull of a deer. It had seen better days, full of chips and cracks. One antler was snapped off at the base while the other was large and had 4 points at the top. It too was cracked and chipped like our skull. We saved our favorite part for last. You humans love to inspire fear in yourselves. This creature was created by your ancestors after all. It's our flesh, it's rotten and smells of death, it clings to the bones, barely able to stay in place. Places like the torso where the skin manages to hold onto the bone, it is instead covered in wounds that are deep gashes which cut to bone. We began to shamble from our spot in the woods. Our steps following an odd rhythm, using a fake limp to emphasize our decrepit appearance. We made it to the fence that encompassed a small portion of yard, must have been the dog's run. Since it enclosed access to the window as well as the back door, we easily walked through the fence, our body returning to its liquid state as it slid through the chain link fence. After we had passed through, we reformed and approached the kitchen window. Inside, we could see the woman washing dishes, pausing every once in a while to let out a strong sob. Her sorrow was so potent we were already beginning to salivate, especially knowing what adding fear to the mix would create. We ducked our head out of sight, and then using a clawed finger we gently tapped the glass. We could taste the panic. We needed to feast. We needed her spirit. We continued our limping steps toward the screen door that was barely held onto the back of her house by just a few rusty screws. Our clawed hand reached out, scratching the door, which let out a disgusting sound, even to our ears. Fear was oozing from everywhere. Our meal was so close. Now for the cruelest yet effective trick we could use. We broke ourselves in two, a small portion running down our leg and across the earth put into the yard. It wasn't enough for our main body to break apart, so we still stood tall. The sliver of us in the yard began to form into a dog-like shape. If it were day, this trick would never work, but under the light of the moon. That shape was a dog, her dog. We scratched at the screen, light enough to pass for a dog. We then slumped away as we heard the woman approach. Hope had filled her spirit, even though she knew sadness would follow. Her door opened and she stepped down the few steps which lead into the yard. She stood in shock at the sight of the apparition. "Max?" Her voice quivered as tears began to roll down her cheeks. Her spirit smelled bizarre, even though we knew this smell all too well. It was a mix of hope, happiness, and sadness. She took a large step and quickly broke off into a run into the yard. Her voice louder now, calling out, "Max, is that really you?" As the end of her question sprang from her mouth, we watched as a small portion of our former self fell into nothingness, the shadow of an old dog now gone. The woman collapsed, the hope and happiness evaporating from her spirit. The sadness had grown stronger, but now unexpectedly there was anger too. Most likely aimed at her own false hope. We approached her without our fake limp. Mere steps away we stood behind and opened out mouth to speak. "Your spirit is so terribly sad. Let us soothe you." Her head whipped around to look at us. Her mouth opened wide and she screamed, "Well, try to." The sound never made it out of her throat. She began to backpedal while still down on the ground. "You'll have your good dog back soon enough," our deep low voice rumbled out of our mouth as we raised one of our decaying hands. With one swipe her body crumpled to the floor. Her heart came to a stop as her neck opened up. Our form shifted back to the vaguely humanoid shape we had become so familiar with. We bent over and began to gorge ourselves on the feast of her spirit. Once our hunger was put to rest, we continued our work. We began to consume the flesh, which to us was of little nutritional use. We truly could consume any matter and it would suit our needs to grow our mass. But we consumed flesh for a very simple reason, to trick you feeble-minded humans. Of course we are telling you this trick here, but could you tell the difference? We needed to make this look like a large creature had done this. The flesh consumed in a way to look like a hungry bear was here. We were in agreement that her body was now mangled convincingly enough a bear could have done it. Now how did bear get in? This was a simple solution, though. We simply walked to the fence and used our strength to bend the frail aluminum down at if a heavy creature climbed over. Our spirit full, and our hunt complete, it was time to move on. We needed more, the mother needed more. Yet after so long hunting we stopped longing for the mother. Well, until next time, keep your emotions in check. We are the ones who watch, maybe we are watching you.